Knife of Dreams is the 11th book in the Wheel of Time. This is where things are starting to really pick up the pace, where the previous three books have definitely slowed down the story a lot. A lot of it is just focused on the same kind of storylines that we've seen prior. So there's a big emphasis placed on specific storylines, and we're just kind of adding on to that. Book 11 is where we're seeing storylines come into fruition. We're seeing characters being placed where they should be before the epic finale, right? Yeah, Knife of Dreams, it did its job, which is to really tie all these loose ends and really set everything up before the epic finale, which is the last three books. And for that, I think it does succeed. And I did really like Knife of Dreams. However, this is still in the same vein as the previous three books, where it is a lot of setup and it is a lot of just tying off loose ends or adding on. It's in that same vein, although this is kind of, I would say, tying off the slog and paving the way forward to the last three books. It's kind of a thing that bridges the two together, right? The slog and the finale. I'm sorry about that bright light over there. How do I get rid of it? Also, I forgot to mention, the beard is gone. I'm sorry. Honestly, it was borderline homeless at one point, so I had to get rid of it. This book has one of the best prologues in the Wheel of Time. I love the prologue for this one. Just so many epic moments. So for my spoiler-free reviews, I kind of just want to do like brief overviews of what I feel, and then in the spoiler ones I can go into a deeper insight for the characters. Overall, what I want to say for Knife of Dreams is that it does what it needs to do, ties off some loose threads, but also, you know, continues to add on to what we already have and really sets up our major players right before, you know, the last three books, and it does a good job of that. Honestly, the best thing I can say about this book is that it gets me hyped. Like, it gets me really hyped for the last three books. Like, there are so many scenes in here that just got me so pumped for future storylines, and even within itself, I still enjoyed reading some of that setup. Yeah, I'm just really excited. I'm like really excited to read the rest of the Wheel of Time. I am so pumped. One thing I want to address about the Wheel of Time as well is that I normally always not complain, but I'm very critical of books, as you can probably tell. Most often, I always tend to have complaints about maybe certain directions a story is going, or certain plot elements that have happened. You know, I get this all the time. No matter if it's a movie or TV show, I'm always criticizing, nitpicking and whatnot. Despite the fact that the Wheel of Time has issues. It has fundamental issues, like structurally, I would say. And those first couple of books were quite rough to get through and whatnot, and some of the characters are a little bit annoying at the beginning. But beyond all that, with all of these books that we have gotten, I don't think I've ever once had an issue with the direction the story is going, which is one of the best compliments I could give to any series. Like, I'm always on board with whatever Jordan is doing, whatever new storyline is introduced, whatever he's setting up, I'm always down for it. And I know he has planned this out so meticulously, so well, that it's all going to pay off. And I don't get that kind of trust with most authors. Like, I've read a lot of fantasy books, and I could tell at some point that an author has either lost focus or they've become overwhelmed with the series, and I'm not sure whether they know what they want to do with it. You know, we get this all the time, but I do not get that with the Wheel of Time, which is awesome. I want to talk about spoilers now. So, book opens off, one of my favorite introductions ever. We get Galad. We haven't seen this guy since book 5 or something. So we see Galad with the white cloaks, and Galad, being who he is, obviously is the stepson of Morghese, and he heard about what I forgot the son of a bitch's name, but that guy from the white cloak who took advantage of Morghese, right? So Galad is defending the honor of his stepmother and challenges him to Agnikai. He challenges him to a duel. And it's an awesome fight. You know, I love seeing sword fights. You know, we get a lot of magic fights. You know, using the one power. It's refreshing to see, you know, a combat and just a normal no powers, no magic, nothing. Just a normal sword fight. I like seeing that. It adds a lot of variety, right? And Galad kind of leads off a faction of white cloaks now. By the way, I just want to say I have always liked Galad more than Gorn. Even in the Eye of the World, where Galad was kind of a dick to Rand, I have always liked him more than Gorn. Like, Gorn is just a bit of a wet blanket for me. Don't get me wrong, Gon's a fine character. I've read a bit of The Gathering of Storm, and he has improved a lot as a character. But Galad is, I've always liked Galad. I'm just saying it here. I mean, the guy pretty much started a war so Nynaeve and Elaine could escape. I mean, who would do that? I mean, it's pretty messed up. But hey, the guy, he sticks with his word. He's so honorable that he's just kind of stubborn and a little bit of a dick, and I really love characters like that. We also see other, in the introductions we see so many interlude chapters of different perspectives. We see some stuff with Alviarin and the Forsaken that's leading into interesting territory, because for a long time the Forsaken and Alviarin are just kind of just trudging around doing their thing. Not much is really moving forward, but now we're seeing stuff moving forward, which is awesome. I've already talked about what I did like from the slog. Now, by the way, I just want to say Knife of Dreams is not part of the slog, right? Knife of Dreams is a really good book. In fact, I liked most of the slog, if I'm being honest with you. But I do want to pick out one specific storyline that I think has suffered the most in the slog, and that's Perrin. So, Perrin in this book is finally concluding the Shaido and the Massima storyline, right? So, and it's a really great conclusion here. So I want to talk about that. We're finally seeing Perrin and the rescue of Faile and Alejandra and Morghese come to fruition. We've seen this plan. It's a great plan. He strikes a deal with some of the Sinchan, and we've seen them kind of not poisoning but tainting the water with forkroot tea, so all the wise ones, all the hundreds and hundreds of wise ones in that camp will get knocked out. And the wise ones were some of the biggest threats in the Shaido. So once that's dealt with, that's when they're in a more confident position to wage a kind of a battle against the Shaido. Even though they are outnumbered, they still have an advantage of having Aes Sedai with them, and the Sinchan as well. Just the way it's set out, the way this battle is set out, awesome. I love seeing the planning, got some heist mission vibes with it, and all the pieces are put together. Then we see Faile's perspective and how she was done dirty by Galena, and she was trapped underground in that thing. And then Roland, that Shaido, I think was it the brotherless, right? Who is actually one of the few nice people within the Shaido who sets out to help her. And just the attack, the battle starts. It's awesome. It's amazing. Perrin has only one drive, one goal, which is to save Faile. And then we get Aram's betrayal, which was set up with Massima, because Aram is being corrupted by Massima now. And that was quite heartbreaking, because Aram was this tinker, right? Who followed the way of the leaf. He was this pacifist, and now he's been corrupted and he's delusional, and he just had to be put down. And then obviously we get Perrin and Faile reuniting, but before that we get a really amazing scene where Perrin sees Roland with Faile, and he sees Shaido, so he doesn't know that this guy is nice. He just sees Shaido and he sees someone handling his wife, right? So he just goes out and he kills Roland. I love it when stories really give you both sides of the spectrum. We've seen both sides of the war, and we know that there are some awful people on Perrin's side like Massima, and there are some awful people like Savannah on the Shaido side, but then there are some generally good-hearted people like Roland. But in war, you don't know that. In war, there's only the other person, and so Perrin just straight up kills what is otherwise a good and honourable man to get to his wife. What I expected was Faile to just be hesitant and to be really angry at Perrin for doing this, but no, she reunites with him and embraces him because she knows that this is what war entails. And I really like that, because in any other story they would have done the stereotypical thing of, oh no, you killed the guy who was actually nice to me, I don't even know who you are anymore, you're a monster, that kind of stuff. I hate seeing that all the time. I'm glad Faile is different from other characters of this archetype, and I really enjoyed how Jordan he's delving into some really profound themes in this storyline. And what can I say? I enjoy the conclusion of this storyline. However, I want to talk a bit more about Perrin, and Perrin specifically these last 3 books. Now, for me, I enjoyed Perrin as a character. If you don't remember, he's one of the few characters in the beginning of this series that I was really invested in, and I was like, I like this guy, right? And even in Shadows Rising, he had this really amazing underdog story where he kind of turned into this hero. And then after that, I kind of took a bit of a break. I'm completely fine with characters disappearing for a book. I don't think authors should be forced to include pointless storylines just so a character can remain within the fold of things, it's fine to take a break. That's great. But it's honestly after Demise Well that I really got the impression that Perrin has kind of been pushed towards the side. And for me, in the Wheel of Time, you have all these crazy threats like the Forsaken, which is what Rand deals with most of the time, and then the Sinchan, which is where Matt's storyline has been pushed towards, and all these giant players like the Aes Sedai Civil War, where Gwen is now spearheading that storyline. We're seeing all these major threats, right? And all of our characters are in all these different places dealing with all these major threats. However, if you were to tell me what were the two major threats that I didn't really care about and really weren't that impactful, or in the grand scheme of things were kind of like a side quest, then I would say it's the Shaido and Massima. And unfortunately, Perrin is the one who has to deal with those two threats. And for me, these past few books, it really feels like Perrin has been relegated to clean up all the side quests, right? And our characters like Rand, Matt, and Gwen are doing some really interesting and cool stuff, and their stories are just growing and growing, and we're getting like such interesting stuff with them. And Perrin's just kind of been relegated to this storyline and to deal with these side quests and walk around for a couple of books doing nothing while yearning for Faile. I would have preferred this storyline, this conclusion to the storyline, much more if I saw it 2 books before. I think this could have been seen 2 books before. I think the rescue of Faile and the whole war against the Shaido could have been done in a couple of books, and Jordan could have just benched Perrin for 2 books until he would have to return for the last 3 books, right? I am completely aware that Perrin will have much more to do in the last 3 books, for sure. But these past 4 books, I feel like it could have been shortened down. I really got the sense that this is the one storyline that's been elongated unnecessarily. Like, for example, there are other characters whose storylines have been elongated during these past few books, and most of them I loved. I love most of them because I think they benefited from them. This is the one that was affected the most, in my opinion. In fact, it was the only one that was affected the most, and it's the only one that I would have a major complaint about, despite the fact that this conclusion to the Shaido storyline is really phenomenal and it is really good. I just would have liked it more if we saw it 1 book earlier, or ideally 2 books earlier. So another storyline that's getting concluded is Elaine and the Succession War against Aramilla. And man, I really enjoyed this storyline. I think Elaine has grown the most as a character throughout the past 4 books in terms of what people call the slog, right? And seeing her as this politician, this Machiavellian schemer, handling all these different people such as the Athan Mier, the Black Arja, the Succession War, the Borderlanders laying siege outside, was handled very well. It's all just built very well. You know, I like the cast with her, such as Burgett and Avienda. That goodbye with Avienda was very emotional. And let's just talk about like the actual conclusion of the storyline, which I really enjoyed. So, do you remember that guard who is a dark friend who managed to sneak his way into Gwen's close circles, and then Elaine, who sneaked his way into Elaine's close circles. Obviously, over time, Elaine realized that this guy's kind of a creep, and he's also definitely not someone she should trust. So she has suspicions about him, and then from one of her advisors, she finally finds out he's a dark friend working for the Black Arja. She gets the location of the Black Arja, and this is kind of where this is kind of where Elaine makes these hasty decisions without much thought. I don't know if it's pregnancy brain. It sounds like pregnancy brain. It's probably not pregnancy brain. That's kind of rude. I apologize for saying that. But she just goes straight up, heads to the Black Arja with a bunch of Aes Sedai. Not much of a plan, and it kind of goes wrong, obviously. But from this failure, obviously some of the Aes Sedai died during this encounter, and Elaine is captured. But from this, she spins it into a win. And obviously Burgett has a water bond with Elaine. She knows some stuff is up. She knows how far away Elaine is, because it's established that a warder can feel the distance between the Aes Sedai. And she sets out a deal with the Athan Mier to help them with this confrontation against the Black Arja. Obviously, if Elaine dies, their deal with the Aes Sedai teaching them some of the ways would dissipate as well. So that's Budget being the MVP of this storyline, gathering the army despite the fact it runs the risk of Aramilla invading Camlin. And then she gathers some of the Athenmia because obviously some of the Aes Sedai can't attack them. We get awesome battle against the Black Arja, and just them stemming a loss to a victory was done so well. I really enjoyed how this storyline was concluded. Obviously events lead to events, and Aramilla has kind of lost, and Elaine gathers the support of all the other major houses and officially becomes Queen of Andor. And just this whole storyline, I think, was done really well. This is one of the things that benefited from being dragged across like 4 books, because throughout that we saw Elaine grow as a character, we see her tackle all these different issues, and it was just organically done really well. So Rand and his crew, which includes Lon, Nynaeve, and Cauthon, and a whole bunch of, Ashran Man and Aes Sedai and whatnot. So I just kind of want to talk about that part about Rand. So Rand has a lighter presence, like he did in Crossroads of Twilight, but what we do get of him here is really, really interesting and exciting. So Rand's main goal right now is to unite forces with the Sinchan, because the Sinchan are the big major force, the big thing that's preventing him from uniting all the lands against Tarmon Gaidon, and they hold a lot of the I forgot, is it like they hold a lot of like the north and west? No, I'm bugging out here. They hold a lot of the south, right? Because that's where Amadicia is. What essentially is, Rand has united half of the world, Sinchan has kind of conquered half of the world, right? And Rand realizes that striking a deal with the Sinchan right now is the best course of action to prepare for Tarmon Gaidon. So he is tricked by the Forsaken Semiraj to attend a meeting with the Daughter of the Nine Moons. Obviously this is fake, because we know that Tuan is currently with Mat. So when he goes there, he recognizes Semiraj, and she just freaking blows his hand off. Yeah, like straight up, she just burns his hand off. Like Rand Alfor, Luke Skywalker, he has no left hand. And what interests me the most is the after effects of this. So obviously the Aes Sedai handle Semiraj, they trap her in bonds and whatnot. But Rand doesn't even give a shit about his hand. That thing, he looks at it, he acknowledges it, and just moves on. And you can just see just the drive in him. All he cares about is Tarmon Gaidon and the last battle. Even just losing a hand doesn't elicit any reaction out of him. It's something he just brushes off. He is so dedicated and so lost in his cause, he's kind of forgotten to be a human being, and it's this slow but subtle loss of humanity that makes me so invested in the Rand al'Thor character right now. This giant blow to him, like losing a hand, really raises the stakes for the rest of the story, and we're really getting an impression that Rand al'Thor is slowly being submerged by Lews Therin and the whole Dragon Reborn persona, and the Rand we knew from before is slowly but surely dying. And man, this is a phenomenal character. Like, I remember how critical I was of Rand al'Thor in the first 2 books, and I will stand by that. You can find a way to get readers to be invested into your main character. I don't think Jordan did a great job of it in The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt, but the journey is what really matters, and the journey is exquisite. Also, Cauthon, really, really liking this character and the foil she provides for Rand. She's one of the few people who can really speak out against him and really, confront him for his behaviour and whatnot. And I'm excited to see her place within this tapestry. I also really love that scene with Nynaeve and Lon. Obviously Lon's entire character is based on this internal fight with the shadow he has. Obviously Malkia was taken over by the Blight. Obviously he marches there to the borderlands of the Blight. Obviously Nynaeve doesn't drop him off exactly at the stop he wants to be dropped off. She drops him off I think over at Saldea or something, and she kind of in the attempt that the rest of the Malkia and the Borderlanders would march behind Lon in his fight against the Blight, and that was a really great scene, and I really liked that. Mat Cauthon, also like Rand al'Thor, character I didn't like, and now just one of the most interesting characters in the Wheel of Time. Like Elaine, I think his storyline benefited a lot from being dragged out, because throughout this past couple of books we spent so much time developing his rapport with Tuan, and really buying into the fact that these two will eventually marry each other and fall in love with one another. I think Tuan's interactions with him are hilarious. I love that one chapter where it's in her perspective, and Matt is never referred to as Matt. He's just called Toy. That's really funny, and I really like that. The banter is great. These cast of characters are fun. I love Tuan. I love Matt. Obviously, here we're seeing that guy called Kared, I think, who is part of the Black Watch and who's there for Tuan. Obviously, right before Tuan agrees to go with them, she says the words and is now officially married to Matt Cauthon. Obviously, I think this is going to play a part when it comes to the alliance with the Synctron. That's just a theory right now. Obviously, this is quite important. It's quite impactful. We find out that she's always had a suspicion that Matt Cauthon was the person she was meant to be because of some foresight from a domain she had right before she came to Evidar. And all of that stuff, great stuff. I just really enjoy reading Matt Cauthon's storyline these past few books. And that end battle, I love how... I think it's a great final battle for this book. His strategizing is at the forefront of this. You know, he has very few people within the band against these... people who are currently looking for Tuan, because there's a price on her head, right? Because Suroth is a dark friend and she doesn't want Tuan to return because Suroth is next in line to become emperor after the daughter of the Nine Moons dies, and everyone else is dead within her family. So Matt commenced this awesome battle with the band, and some of the Aes Sedai are involved as well. And once again, what I love about these battles is that it's not always we're seeing someone at the forefront. Perrin's battle served as kind of, oh, you're in the perspective of a soldier right now, and we're seeing like one-on-one confrontations in battle. Matt Cauthon's is where the strategizing, and you're seeing this omniscient view. We're seeing battle tactics come into play. We're seeing archers and whatnot, and all these different factions within the army and how battle tactics are planned out. And it provides a really great balance for this book, which I really love. One thing I really want to talk about Matt's storyline, man, I've just got to say, like, Randall Thor and Matt Cauthon, book 3 onwards, their storylines are nothing but an upward spiral of just awesomeness. Like, I'm so continuously invested in every single storyline they're in, and Knife of Dreams single-handedly sets up a storyline that I am so pumped out of my mind to read. I'm so excited for this. So let me set the scene. We know that Moiraine has given a letter to Tom Merrilin, which I always believed to be about his nephew. We know Tom Merrilin's nephew was someone who could channel, and the Aes Sedai gentled him, which caused his inevitable demise, right? There's a bit of contempt and hostility between Tom and Moiraine, and specifically because Moiraine was the most prominent Aes Sedai in those earlier books, he kind of elicited his frustrations, and she was kind of the face of the Aes Sedai for most of the time, right? And for Tom specifically. So I always believed that from Fires of Heaven, when she wrote this letter for Tom, that this would be about his nephew, and it would be Wells of Consolidation, right? I was wrong. It has nothing to do with his nephew. So when Tom gave Matt this letter, I was like, hold up, what is going on? Why does this concern Matt? And then you read it, and guys, I'm so fucking excited. I'm so excited for this storyline. So obviously I said it in my review, Moiraine is not dead. So I should have guessed this earlier. She went through the Ter Angriel, so she's with the Elfin or the Alfin or whatever those lizard people are called. She's in that tower one, and she sets out the key pieces involved for Tom and Matt to launch a rescue for her. She says it's optional, you don't have to do this, but she does say that if they do, because she saw multiple possibilities when she went in that Ter Angriel in Rudine, right? And she says that if you are going to come rescue me or come for me in the Tower of Ghenjei, that Matt Cauthon has to ask for this letter. You can't show it to him until he asks for it, and him, Tom, and someone else, those 3 people are allowed to go into the tower. I have a feeling I know who that third person is, because ever since that Rudine thing in The Shadow Rising, I have always wanted to know who the hell are the Elfin and the Elfin. I want to learn more about them, because as this series progresses, we learn so much more about the history and all this stuff that was a secret to us. Except the Elfin and the Alfin. Who the hell are they? What are they? What is this? What is this tower? And when she mentioned the tower, Matt says, I remember this tower from Eye of the World when he was on that ship with Bael Domon. And I was like, bullshit. There is no way I know Robert Jordan and many authors really plan out their series to a T. But there is no way that Robert Jordan, all the way back in The Eye of the World, wrote in just one knockoff chapter, one throwaway chapter, in one passage about a crystal tower that Rand saw from the distance, and it would never be brought up until 10, 11 books later. There's no way he did that. I checked The Eye of the World, I checked that part, and it's there. It's there. Jordan set it up. I don't think I've ever seen a fantasy series this meticulously planned. Unless this is a thread Jordan wove into the first book and he's like, we'll see what I'll do with that later on. Because, you know, not all authors can truly plan everything out to a T. But I'm convinced that Jordan does. Because that is insane. And I've got to say, you know, I haven't even finished the series yet, but Rand al'Thor, Matt Cauthon, you've really turned me around. You're my two least favourite characters. And now you are the two characters I'm constantly talking about every time I review a Wheel of Time. And what can I say? Knife of Dreams sets out the future storylines perfectly. It's a great book. I wouldn't say it's an amazing book that didn't necessarily blew my socks off. A lot of it is just setting up and paving the way forwards for the rest, for the giant conclusion, right? And that's why I would give this a 7.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it. It was good. A lot of setup, it's a lot of tying off loose ends and whatnot, but otherwise a pretty solid entry. Also, I kind of want to take this time to really talk about the fact that Knife of Dreams is the last book that Robert Jordan published before he passed away, and it didn't dawn on me until I truly read Brandon Sanderson's foreword in book 12, The Gathering Storm. And it's really upsetting that Jordan, who has put so much passion and thought and just planning into one of the most ambitious fantasy series I've ever read, wouldn't see the conclusion of his own story. Obviously he knows what it is, he's planned everything out, but he wouldn't see it published, and that's kind of heartbreaking. And I know this is not new news, but I just wanted to take the time to appreciate what Jordan has done here, and he's crafted one of the most ambitious fantasy stories I've ever had the pleasure of reading. I haven't even read the conclusion of this story, but I already know it's going to be up there with one of my favourite fantasy series of all time. I am completely aware that Brandon Sanderson is... I also think it's wonderful that the publishers stayed true to Jordan's wishes and saw that the Wheel of Time would get concluded. And who better to do that than up-and-coming author Brandon Sanderson, right? That is amazing. And I know, I just reading The Gathering Storm right now, I can just tell Brandon Sanderson is handling this with so much care and respect, and he's not making it his own thing, he's still making it Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. And I think that's quite wonderful. Anyway, that was quite a long tangent. I just wanted to appreciate Robert Jordan because this was the last book that he would see published before he passed away. Anyway guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.